Sarah Chen drummed her fingers against her desk, her eyes fixed on the quarterly report spread before her. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of her tech startup's office, casting a warm glow over the minimalist workspace she'd carefully designed. At 32, she had built SmartFlow Technologies from the ground up, turning her innovative payment processing system into a company valued at millions. A gentle knock interrupted her concentration. "Come in," she called, expecting her assistant Thomas with her usual morning coffee. Thomas entered, but instead of coffee, he carried a cream-colored envelope sealed with an ornate golden wax stamp. "This just arrived by special courier," he said, placing it carefully on her desk. They insisted it required immediate attention. Sarah picked up the envelope, running her finger over the familiar insignia pressed into the wax, her grandmother's personal seal. A slight frown creased her forehead. Her grandmother, Eleanor Chen, had always preferred traditional methods of communication, but even this seemed unusually formal. "That'll be all, Thomas." "Thank you," she said, waiting until the door clicked shut before breaking the seal. Inside, she found a letter written in her grandmother's elegant handwriting, along with several legal documents. As she began to read, her hands trembled slightly. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I've finally taken my last bow from the stage of life. Don't be sad, my brilliant girl. I've lived exactly the life I wanted, and my greatest joy has been watching you forge your own path, away from the family legacy." Sarah's vision blurred with tears. She hadn't expected this morning to bring news of her grandmother's passing. Eleanor had been her anchor, her confidant, the woman who had encouraged her to pursue her dreams in technology instead of following the expected route into banking like the rest of the Chen family. As she continued reading, her eyes widened. The following paragraphs detailed something her grandmother had never mentioned: her majority ownership of Regional Trust Bank, a mid-sized financial institution with over 50 branches across 3 states. Eleanor had kept this information from Sarah deliberately, wanting her granddaughter to find her own way without the weight of family expectations. Now that ownership was passing to Sarah. She set down the letter and picked up the legal documents, her mind racing. Regional Trust Bank wasn't just any bank. It was a respected institution with over $5 billion in assets. The documentation confirmed everything. Board positions, voting rights, share certificates, all transferred to her name. Sarah stood and walked to the window, watching the busy street below. People hurried past, clutching coffee cups and briefcases, unaware that her world had just shifted dramatically. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. "You've proven yourself on your own terms. Now you can choose what to do with this legacy, free from obligation or expectation." Her phone buzzed, another text from the bank's CEO requesting an urgent meeting. She'd been receiving messages all morning but had been too absorbed in work to check them. Now it all made sense. Sarah took a deep breath, straightening her blazer out of habit. She built SmartFlow from nothing, revolutionizing how small businesses handled digital payments. She'd done it her way, wearing what she wanted, making her own rules, earning respect through innovation rather than tradition. Looking back at the letter on her desk, she made a decision. Before meeting with the board or making any announcements, she needed to understand Regional Trust Bank from the ground up. Not as an owner, but as a customer. After all, that's how she built SmartFlow, by understanding the user experience firsthand. She picked up her phone to text Thomas. "Clear my schedule for the next few days. We're going to do some field research." A small smile played at her lips as she added, "And I'll need a list of all Regional Trust Bank branches in the city." Sarah adjusted her rearview mirror, double-checking her appearance. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore her favorite navy blazer over a white t-shirt and jeans. Her signature startup founder look. She'd visited 3 regional trust branches already this morning, and each experience had been enlightening in its own way. "4th branch on the list," she murmured, reviewing Thomas's meticulously prepared notes. He'd mapped out every location, including peak hours and demographic information for each neighborhood. The current stop was in the heart of the financial district, housed in a towering granite building that seemed to touch the clouds. As she stepped out of her Tesla, Sarah noticed how different this branch felt from the others. The first location she'd visited was in a suburban area where young parents struggled to keep their children entertained while opening college savings accounts. The second was in a retirement community where tellers patiently helped elderly customers with their banking needs. The third served a diverse neighborhood of small business owners, many speaking different languages as they conducted their daily transactions. Inside the financial district branch, marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. The space echoed with the clicking of expensive shoes and the subtle rustling of tailored suits. Sarah felt several pairs of eyes assess her casual attire, but she walked confidently to the welcome desk, channeling the same energy she used when pitching to her first investors. "Good morning," a young associate greeted her, his smile wavering slightly as he took in her appearance. "How may I assist you today?" "I'd like to speak with someone about investment options," Sarah replied, suppressing a smile as she watched him try to decide whether to direct her to a junior advisor or a senior banker. After a moment's hesitation, he led her to a desk where a middle-aged woman sat. The nameplate read Patricia Mills, Senior Investment Advisor. Patricia's perfectly manicured hands paused over her keyboard as she looked up. "Hello," Patricia said warmly, surprising Sarah with her genuine smile. "Please have a seat. What brings you in today?" For the next 30 minutes, Sarah asked questions about various investment products, noting how Patricia maintained her professional demeanor regardless of the size of the hypothetical investments being discussed. She didn't talk down to Sarah or make assumptions based on her casual appearance. As she left Patricia's desk, Sarah noticed a commotion near the premium banking section. A well-dressed man was raising his voice at a teller, waving a check in the air. "Do you know who I am? This is unacceptable." The branch manager quickly appeared, smoothly guiding the man to a private office. Sarah watched the interaction with interest, noting how the other customers pretended not to notice while stealing glances at the scene. She checked her phone. A message from Thomas reminded her about the substantial check from her company's recent software licensing deal that needed to be deposited. She'd been carrying it with her during her branch visits, waiting to see which location felt right for this transaction. The previous branches had been efficient but somewhat impersonal. This one, with its mix of wealth management and traditional banking services, would be perfect for testing how they handled high-value transactions from unexpected sources. Sarah touched the check in her blazer pocket, thinking about her grandmother. Eleanor had always taught her to judge people by their actions, not their assumptions. The true measure of a person, she'd say, is how they treat those they think can't help them. Taking a deep breath, Sarah turned toward the premium banking section. The manager had returned to his desk, straightening his tie after dealing with the angry customer. His nameplate caught the light. James Peterson, branch manager. Sarah squared her shoulders and walked forward. It was time to see how Regional Trust Bank's flagship branch would handle a multi-million-dollar check from a woman in jeans and a blazer. As she approached Peterson's desk, she couldn't help but think that her grandmother would have appreciated the lesson about to unfold. James Peterson's office smelled of leather and coffee, with certificates and awards covering one wall and a large window overlooking the city on the other. He gestured to a chair across from his mahogany desk, his gold-rimmed glasses catching the afternoon light. "How may I assist you today?" he asked, his tone carrying the practiced polish of someone who'd spent decades in premium banking. His eyes flickered briefly over Sarah's casual attire before settling on her face with professional neutrality. Sarah reached into her blazer pocket and withdrew the check, placing it carefully on his desk. "I'd like to deposit this into a new premium account, please." Peterson's hand moved toward the check, then froze. His eyebrows rose fractionally as he registered the amount, $4.7 million. Sarah watched as his expression shifted, the professional mask slipping just enough to reveal something else beneath: suspicion. "This is a substantial sum," he said carefully, lifting the check to examine it more closely. "You understand, of course, that we have certain procedures for transactions of this magnitude." Sarah nodded. "Of course. I have multiple forms of identification, and you're welcome to contact SmartFlow Technologies to verify the check's authenticity. I'm the founder and CEO. Peterson's lips thinned slightly. SmartFlow Technologies, he repeated, typing something into his computer. His frown deepened. I see no record of any previous banking relationship with us. That's correct, Sarah replied. I'm interested in establishing one today. Ms. He glanced at the check again. Chen. Banking relationships of this level typically begin with a referral from an existing client. Do you have such a referral? Sarah thought of her grandmother and suppressed a smile. No, I don't. But I've done my research on Regional Trust Bank and believe it would be a good fit for both my personal and business banking needs. Peterson leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Ms. Chen, you must understand our position. A young woman walks in, dressed very. He paused, searching for the right word, casually, presenting a multi-million-dollar check with no prior banking relationship or referral. Surely you can appreciate our need for due diligence. Absolutely, Sarah agreed. That's why I brought extensive documentation. She reached into her leather messenger bag and produced a folder. Here's my driver's license, passport, company registration documents, and recent press coverage of SmartFlow's latest software release. Peterson accepted the folder but barely glanced at its contents. Ms. Chen, perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of our suburban branches. They're better equipped to handle standard transactions. Sarah felt a familiar flutter in her stomach, the same one she experienced in countless boardrooms when being underestimated. Mr. Peterson, there's nothing standard about this transaction. I'm prepared to comply with any legitimate verification procedures you require. Our verification procedures. He closed the folder without examining the documents. Ms. Chen, I've been in banking for 27 years. My instincts are finely tuned to recognize unusual situations, and this entire scenario raises numerous red flags. Sarah noticed his hand moving toward his desk phone. Mr. Peterson, I assure you. I think we're done here, he interrupted, standing up. I'm afraid I can't assist you today, and I should warn you that attempting to deposit fraudulent checks is a serious offense. Sarah remained seated, her grandmother's words echoing in her mind. True power isn't in showing authority, but in knowing when to reveal it. Mr. Peterson, she began, but he was already pressing a button on his desk phone. Security, please come to my office, he spoke into the intercom. And Ms. Chen, I suggest you leave now, before this becomes more awkward than it already is. As if on cue, Sarah's phone began to ring. She glanced at the screen and allowed herself a small smile. The caller ID read, Regional Trust Bank, Executive Office. The real awkwardness, she realized, was just about to begin. Sarah's phone continued to ring as two security officers appeared in the doorway of Peterson's office. She held up one finger to them, a gesture requesting a moment, and answered the call, putting it on speaker. Sarah Chen speaking, she said calmly, maintaining eye contact with Peterson. Ms. Chen, this is Andrea Martinez, Executive Assistant to the CEO. Mr. Richardson has been trying to reach you all morning regarding tomorrow's board meeting. He's quite eager to discuss your plans for the digital transformation initiative. Peterson's face, which had been set in stern authority just moments before, flickered with uncertainty. He raised his hand slightly, signaling the security officers to wait. Please tell Mr. Richardson, I'll call him back in 10 minutes, Sarah replied. I'm currently in the downtown branch, having an interesting discussion with Mr. Peterson about customer service protocols. There was a pause on the other end. The downtown branch? Oh, of course, Ms. Chen. I'll let him know right away. Sarah ended the call and placed her phone face down on Peterson's desk. The security officers exchanged glances, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. Now, Mr. Peterson, Sarah said softly, shall we continue our discussion about verification procedures? Peterson's complexion had taken on an ashen hue. The board meeting? His voice trailed off as realization dawned. I am, Sarah confirmed, opening her messenger bag again. She withdrew another envelope, the one containing her grandmother's letter, and the bank ownership documents. But I'd prefer to continue our previous conversation. You were explaining why you wouldn't accept this check or review my documentation. The security officers, reading the situation, quietly stepped back into the hallway. Peterson reached for the documents with trembling fingers, but Sarah kept them just out of reach. Actually, she said, I'm more interested in understanding something. When I visited 3 other branches this morning, I observed different approaches to customer service. Patricia Mills, your investment advisor, treated me with respect despite my casual appearance. Why do you think there's such a disparity in service standards within the same institution? Peterson sank back into his chair, his face flushed. Ms. Chen, I sincerely apologize. Had I known. That's exactly my point, Sarah interrupted gently. You shouldn't need to know who I am to treat me, or any customer, with respect. Every person who walks through those doors deserves the same level of professional service. She opened her grandmother's letter, running her fingers over the familiar handwriting. My grandmother, Eleanor Chen, believed that character reveals itself in how we treat those we think can't help or hurt us. She built this bank's reputation on that principle. Recognition flashed across Peterson's face. Eleanor Chen, you're Eleanor's granddaughter. Yes, Sarah nodded, and she would have been fascinated by our interaction today. Tell me, Mr. Peterson, how many other potential clients have you turned away based on similar assumptions? Peterson's shoulders slumped. I don't know, he admitted quietly. Then perhaps that's where we need to start, Sarah said, finally sliding her grandmother's letter across the desk. Read this. It explains her vision for this bank, a vision of inclusive, respectful banking that I intend to continue. As Peterson read, Sarah noticed his expression changing from embarrassment to genuine reflection. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. Your grandmother was a legend in banking, he said softly. She gave me my first job in this industry. I never met her, but her reputation for fairness was well known. I'm ashamed to realize how far I've strayed from those principles. Sarah nodded, reaching for her phone. The question now, Mr. Peterson, is what we're going to do about it. I have that board meeting tomorrow, and I believe you've just helped me identify our first major initiative for change. Sarah's phone buzzed again, this time with a call from Robert Richardson, the CEO himself. She glanced at Peterson, who was still absorbing the contents of Eleanor's letter, his hands slightly trembling as he held the paper. I should take this, she said softly, standing up. Mr. Richardson is probably wondering why his new majority shareholder is causing a stir in the downtown branch. Peterson quickly rose as well, straightening his tie nervously. Of course, Ms. Chen. Would you like some privacy? I can step out. No need, Sarah replied, answering the call on speaker. Robert, good morning. Sarah. Thank goodness I've reached you. Richardson's warm voice filled the office. I heard you're at the downtown branch. I trust James is taking excellent care of you. Peterson's face cycled through several shades of pale as Sarah maintained steady eye contact with him. Actually, Robert, James, and I have been having a fascinating discussion about customer service standards and first impressions. I think you'll find my observations quite interesting at tomorrow's board meeting. A knowing chuckle came through the speaker, already conducting field research just like Eleanor used to do. She would visit branches unannounced, just to see how things really operated. I remember Sarah smiled, watching Peterson's eyes widen at this revelation. She taught me that the true measure of any organization lies in how it treats every customer, not just the ones in expensive suits. There was a pause on the line. James is there with you, isn't he? Richardson asked, his tone shifting slightly. He is. James, Richardson called out. I trust you've realized by now that you've been interacting with Eleanor Chen's granddaughter and our new majority shareholder. Peterson cleared his throat. Yes, sir. Ms. Chen has made that clear. Good, Richardson replied, because Sarah's not just our majority shareholder, she's also the innovative mind behind Smart Flow Technologies. That software system we've been considering for our digital banking upgrade. That's her company. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on anyone in the room. Peterson sank back into his chair, looking as though he needed a moment to process this additional information. "Robert," Sarah interjected, "I'd like to discuss some ideas at tomorrow's meeting. Would you mind if I brought James along? His perspective could be valuable." There was a brief silence on the line. Of course, Richardson responded, curiosity evident in his voice. "James, be there at 9 a.m. sharp." After ending the call, Sarah turned to Peterson, who looked like he was still trying to find the right words. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the office, highlighting the awards on his wall. Awards for excellence in banking that now seemed to mock the day's events. "Miss Chen," he finally managed, "I don't know how to begin to apologize." Sarah held up her hand. "Mr. Peterson, I'm not interested in apologies. I'm interested in solutions. Today has shown me exactly what my grandmother meant in her letter about the bank needing fresh perspectives." She walked to the window, looking out at the busy street below. "You know, when I started SmartFlow, many investors dismissed me because I didn't fit their image of a tech CEO. Their assumptions cost them the opportunity to be part of a billion-dollar company." Turning back to Peterson, she continued, "Tomorrow at the board meeting, I don't want you to defend your actions. Instead, I want you to come prepared with ideas about how we can ensure no customer ever feels judged or dismissed in our branches again." Peterson straightened in his chair, a glimmer of understanding crossing his face. "You're not going to request my resignation?" "No," Sarah replied, picking up her grandmother's letter from his desk. "I'm going to ask for your commitment to help transform this bank into what it always should have been, a place where everyone is treated with dignity, regardless of their appearance or background." As she gathered her things to leave, Sarah paused at the door. "9 a.m. tomorrow, Mr. Peterson. Bring your best ideas, because starting tomorrow, we're going to change how banking works." The Regional Trust Bank boardroom buzzed with anticipation at 8:55 a.m. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the long mahogany table where board members settled into their leather chairs, stealing glances at their watches and smartphones. Sarah stood by the window, watching the city come to life below. She wore the same blazer and jeans combination from yesterday, a deliberate choice that didn't go unnoticed by the formally dressed board members. At precisely 8:59 a.m., James Peterson arrived, carrying a thick notebook and looking like he hadn't slept much. "Good morning, James," Sarah greeted him warmly. "Please, take a seat here." She gestured to the chair directly to her right, traditionally reserved for senior executives. A few eyebrows raised around the table. Robert Richardson called the meeting to order at 9 a.m. sharp. "Before we begin our regular agenda, I'd like to introduce Sarah Chen, Eleanor Chen's granddaughter and our new majority shareholder. Sarah, the floor is yours." Sarah remained standing, her presence commanding despite her casual attire. "Thank you, Robert. Yesterday, I visited 4 of our branches as a potential customer. I'd like to share that experience, but first," she turned to Peterson. "James, would you tell the board about our interaction?" Peterson straightened in his chair, his face flushed but determined. All eyes turned to him as he recounted the previous day's events, omitting no detail of his assumptions and behavior. The boardroom grew increasingly quiet as he spoke. "I've spent the night reviewing our customer service protocols," Peterson continued, his voice growing stronger. "And I've identified several critical gaps in our approach." He opened his notebook, revealing pages of careful annotations and ideas. Sarah watched the board members' reactions, noting their subtle shifts in posture and expression. "Thank you, James, for your honesty. Now let me share what I observed in our other branches." She described Patricia Mill's professional treatment, the suburban branch's warmth toward young families, and the retirement branch's patience with elderly customers. Each location had its strengths, but also its inconsistencies. "We have pockets of excellence, but no unified standard of respect and inclusion." Opening her laptop, Sarah projected a series of statistics onto the boardroom screen. "These numbers show something interesting. Our branches in affluent areas have higher customer satisfaction ratings, but not because of better service. They simply serve fewer customers who might face prejudgment or dismissal." The board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Sarah continued, "My grandmother built this bank on the principle of financial inclusion. Yesterday, James helped me realize how far we've strayed from that vision. But he also showed me something else, the capacity for growth and change." She clicked to the next slide, revealing a comprehensive plan. This is the Customer Excellence Initiative. It combines technological innovation from SmartFlow with a complete overhaul of our customer service approach. James has already contributed several valuable insights to this framework. The room stirred with surprise as Peterson began explaining specific points of the initiative, his expertise in traditional banking blending seamlessly with Sarah's innovative approaches. "We're not here to point fingers," Sarah concluded. "We're here to restore and modernize my grandmother's vision. Every person who walks through our doors deserves respect, regardless of their appearance or account balance." Robert Richardson leaned forward, studying the proposal. "This is ambitious, Sarah. It will require significant resources and cultural change." "Yes," Sarah agreed, "and we'll start with our flagship downtown branch." James has volunteered to pilot the program, using his own experience as a teaching tool for other managers. As the board members began discussing implementation details, Sarah noticed Peterson's expression, a mixture of relief, purpose, and determination. Her grandmother had always said that the best leaders don't just fix problems, they transform them into opportunities for growth. Looking around the boardroom, Sarah saw the spark of real change beginning to take hold. This wasn't just about correcting one manager's mistake. It was about reshaping an entire institution's approach to banking. And it had all started with a rejected check and a pair of jeans. 3 weeks after the board meeting, the downtown branch of Regional Trust Bank had transformed into a learning laboratory. The marble floors and crystal chandeliers remained, but the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. Sarah sat in on the morning training session, watching James Peterson address a group of branch managers from across the state. "I want you to look at this photo," Peterson said, projecting an image onto the screen. It showed a young woman in jeans and a blazer standing at a bank counter. "What assumptions might you make about this customer?" The room filled with thoughtful responses. "Probably has a small account," one manager suggested. "Maybe new to banking," another offered. "Could be looking for basic services," a third added. Peterson nodded, then clicked to the next slide. It showed the same woman in a corporate setting, speaking at a tech conference. "This is our majority shareholder, Sarah Chen, CEO of SmartFlow Technologies. The assumptions we just made. They cost our branch a multi-million-dollar account, and they nearly cost me my career." Sarah watched as Peterson shared his story, noting how he transformed his experience into a powerful teaching tool. The managers leaned forward, engaged by his honesty and the practical lessons he drew from his mistake. In another corner of the branch, Patricia Mills was conducting a parallel session with frontline staff, focusing on creating welcoming experiences for all customers. Her proven track record of unbiased service had earned her a promotion to Customer Experience Training Lead. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Thomas, her assistant. The preliminary data from the pilot program was in. Customer satisfaction scores had increased by 27% in just 3 weeks, with particularly strong improvements among younger clients and small business owners. "Mr. Peterson," a voice called from the back of the training room. "What about risk management? We still need to verify large transactions." Peterson smiled, prepared for this question. "Absolutely. Let me show you our new verification protocol." He displayed a streamlined digital system, a collaboration between the bank's security team and SmartFlow's developers. This allows us to maintain security while treating every customer with respect from the first interaction. Sarah stood quietly and slipped out of the training room, walking through the branch. She paused to observe a young teller helping an elderly gentleman with his mobile banking app, showing remarkable patience. Nearby, a loan officer was speaking in Spanish with a small business owner, making her feel comfortable and understood. At her old desk, now converted into a customer service station, Peterson had posted Eleanor Chen's core banking principles, beautifully framed. "Every person who walks through these doors carries dreams. Our job is to help those dreams grow, not judge whether they deserve to dream. Sarah's phone buzzed again. This time it was Robert Richardson. The board is impressed with the downtown branch's numbers. They've approved immediate rollout to all locations. As she crafted her response, Sarah noticed a young woman walking tentatively into the bank, wearing clothes that had seen better days. A few months ago, she might have received questioning looks. Today, Patricia Mills was already approaching her with a warm smile. "Welcome to Regional Trust," Patricia said. "How can we help you today?" I want to open a business account," the woman replied, clutching a folder. "I'm starting a catering company, but I don't know much about banking." "You've come to the right place," Patricia assured her. "Let's start by understanding your business goals." Sarah watched the interaction unfold, remembering her grandmother's words about the true purpose of banking. It wasn't about transactions or profits. It was about giving people the tools to build their futures. Peterson appeared at her side, having concluded his training session. "That could have been you that day," he said quietly, nodding toward the aspiring caterer. "It was me," Sarah replied. "It was my grandmother when she first started. It's everyone who walks in here with hopes and dreams." She turned to Peterson with a smile. "Ready for the afternoon session?" "Yes," he nodded firmly. "Today we're covering how to recognize and challenge our own biases. The real-world examples have been incredibly effective." "Good," Sarah said, "because next week we start training the suburban branches. And James, wear jeans to that one. Let's really shake things up." 6 months after Sarah Chen's memorable visit to the downtown branch, Regional Trust Bank's main lobby hosted a different kind of gathering. The marble floors now supported a diverse mix of people: startup founders in hoodies, traditional business owners in suits, retirees, students, and small business dreamers, all mingling at the bank's first Community Innovation Summit. Sarah stood at the podium, wearing her signature blazer and jeans, addressing the packed room. 6 months ago, this bank rediscovered its soul, she began, her voice carrying easily through the space. "Today, I'm proud to share that Regional Trust has been named Most Inclusive Financial Institution by the National Banking Association." Applause filled the room as James Peterson, now Chief of Customer Experience, joined her at the podium. His transformation had been as remarkable as the bank's. He traded his formal suits for business casual attire and his rigid judgments for open-minded curiosity. "Our numbers tell an incredible story," Peterson announced, bringing up the quarterly results on the screen. "Customer satisfaction is up 48% across all branches. New account openings have increased by 65%, with particular growth in small business and first-time banking customers. But the real success lies in the stories." He gestured to a young woman in the audience, the aspiring caterer from months ago. Maria's Authentic Catering now employs 15 people and services corporate events across the city. She received her first business loan from us 3 months ago. Maria stood, beaming, as the crowd applauded. Next to her sat an elderly gentleman with his grandson. Mr. Thompson here learned mobile banking through our senior digital literacy program, taught by the same teller who helped him that first day. He now teaches other seniors in his retirement community. Sarah watched proudly as Peterson continued highlighting success stories. The bank's transformation had exceeded even her optimistic expectations. Every branch now featured a mix of traditional banking services and innovative digital solutions, with staff trained to meet customers wherever they were on their financial journey. Patricia Mills, now running the bank's expanded training program, approached the podium with a surprise. "We're implementing a new initiative today," she announced, unveiling a portrait of Eleanor Chen that would hang in every branch. The Eleanor Chen Scholarship for Financial Innovation will fund education for promising entrepreneurs from underserved communities. Sarah felt tears welling up as she read the inscription beneath her grandmother's portrait. "Every dream deserves a chance to grow." The celebration continued into the afternoon, with workshops and networking sessions filling the bank's spaces. In one corner, a tech startup pitched their ideas to interested investors. In another, small business owners shared success stories with aspiring entrepreneurs. The barriers that once divided different types of customers had dissolved, replaced by a vibrant community of people helping people. Later, as the event wound down, Sarah found Peterson in his old office, now converted into a small business advisory center. "Quite a change from 6 months ago," she smiled. "I was just thinking about that day," he replied, adjusting the sleeve of his casual button-down shirt. "You know, what started as the most humbling moment of my career became its greatest blessing. We're not just making banking more inclusive, we're changing lives." Sarah picked up a framed photo from his desk, a group shot of the original downtown branch team, taken the day they launched the transformation program. "My grandmother used to say that banks don't just store money, they store people's hopes. We're finally living up to that vision." As they walked through the lobby one last time that evening, they passed a young woman in worn jeans nervously approaching a teller. Without missing a beat, the teller smiled warmly and said, "Welcome to Regional Trust. How can we help make your dreams reality today?" Sarah caught Peterson's eye, and they shared a knowing look. The circle was complete. The bank had become what it always should have been, a place where every person's potential mattered more than their appearance, where financial services were truly about service, and where one humbling moment had sparked a revolution in banking. As Sarah stepped out into the evening air, her phone buzzed with a message. Another bank was interested in implementing their inclusive banking model. She smiled, thinking of her grandmother. This was just the beginning.